Listen up. There's no more excuses.
We're empowering those who want the hustle by exposing the status quo.
The days of ordinary are over.
It's time to crush mediocrity and start discovering your greatest potential.
Welcome to the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today we have Sharon Hulce in the house. Sharon is a president CEO of Employment Resource Group, ERG, a nationwide executive search firm based in Appleton, Wisconsin. A 27-year veteran of the executive search industry, Sharon founded ERG over 20 years ago to change the traditional way search was done, ensuring ERG would never be the firm that just presents resumes. She has dedicated her company's mission to providing thought leadership on every level, ensuring successful hires for both the company and the individual. Sharon is proud of her 27 years of transforming lives. She is also a Forbes published author, a Well-Done Professional Midlife Crisis, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on, as well as a 2023 Wisconsin Titan CEO 100 honoree. More to talk about later. Sharon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
We're excited
to have you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Let's start by having you jump into your journey and how you got to where you are now. And bear in mind, we only have 40-ish minutes.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. Raised on a dairy farm, got married at 19. Just like all my friends, 10 weddings before I got married at 19 as a bridesmaid. So that tells you the culture of where I was raised. Moved to the Upper Peninsula and took a job with a clothing company out of North Carolina. Loved my job. Loved it. I hired all their salespeople across the country. So I would get on a plane on Monday morning and I'd come home Friday night. So I wasn't home during the week, but I was engaging with really interesting women. Fast forward, I have a bad flight. I'm flying from St. Louis to Chicago and O'Hare. And when you're a seasoned flyer, you know the drill, right? And flight attendants, please prepare for landing. And we don't land. Well, fast forward an hour later, the pilot comes on. He said, okay, we're just going to give it to you straight. They found our landing gear back where we took off in St. Louis. So we know we're going to have a belly landing. That was the good news. The bad news is we refueled in St. Louis. So you can't belly land on a full tank of gas. It will result in a fire. So we're going to be up here for about 4 hours. We're going to go out, dump the remaining fuel in a field, and we're going to fly in to O'Hare on our belly. Obviously went fine, but I became a very nervous flyer at that moment. I did get on the next flight to go to Iron Mountain, Michigan, which was where I was living, scared to death. But I also knew if I didn't get on a plane again, I'd never fly ever. So I made myself get on that plane. But I knew I had to find a new job. I had been recruited by a search firm in Chicago. I actually called them, accepted the job. And my then husband, who, had an accident himself, said, right before I was supposed to start, he had a kind of a panic attack and said, I can't do it. I can't move to Chicago. So I literally opened up the Yellow Pages and I found Management Recruiters of Appleton. I called who became my boss and I said, you don't know me. Here's my story. He said, can you be here at 1:00? I go, I can be there at 1:00. I started June 2nd. And by December 31st, I was National Rookie of the Year. And I had found my life vocation. The funniest story of that is when I walked in, Russ said to me, you have to pick your desk specialty. And I go, what does that mean? And he said, well, you have to specialize in an industry. And I go, okay. And he goes, well, what do you want it to be? And I said, I have dealt with high maintenance women for the last 7 years. Men would be great. And he said, construction. I said, perfect. I knew what a hammer was and that's it. And that's how I picked it. And 27 years later, I still run a construction desk.
Is it safe to say you're glad you didn't move to Chicago?
I am very glad I didn't move to Chicago. I think in hindsight, knowing what I know now, that would have been a fabulous job. And I would have done very well because it was a very established practice I would have been taking over. But everything happens for a reason, right? I'm a firm believer that life is, what happens while we're making other plans. So, that's it all happened the way it was supposed to.
So Sharon, anytime somebody makes a shift like that, to kind of walk into a spot where you don't have the background, you don't have the experience, right? And to go from learning the job to, top performer, what were some of the things that you think allowed you to propel that fast?
So I would tell you that there's the one thing that I think has made me successful all of my 27 years is I have really good intuition, and my sisters tell me that I'm just like my father. So if it looks like a rat and it smells like a rat, I'm going to find the rat, right? So I'm pretty good at reading people very quickly and assessing, this is somebody that I want in my circle, or this is somebody I don't, or this is somebody I want to represent to my clients, or somebody I don't. So that certainly helped. I have boundless energy. I worked all the time because I didn't know my craft. So I knew that I had to put in the 10,000 hours to be successful. And I knew I had to do that in not, the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So I worked a lot. I was in the office every day by 6, and I didn't leave the office most nights till 9 or 10 at night. So I really worked hard to learn my craft. I also, this is the farmer's daughter in me. I just don't quit. I have if you tell me I can't do something, watch me, because then I'll figure out how to do it. So I think all of that together, that and the fact that, let's be honest, I like to flirt and I like to sort of BS a little bit. That didn't hurt in a man's world either, especially back then. I was kind of cute. I was in my late 20s, early 30s. So that helped too.
A lot of things we talk about with hustle is it all starts with just putting the time in, the hard work, right? And I think we've had so many guests that when we've talked about, people look at them from afar, man, you're like an overnight success. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, I've been doing it for 15 years, right? I mean, and that mindset of, if you want to be an outlier, you got to do outlier work.
Well, and while I'm not a proponent of working like I did. I didn't have any choice. And I think that was part of the success too, is I had a husband that didn't work. So, he had his accident, so he wasn't working. So I was the only breadwinner, and I went from having a decent income to pretty much none overnight. So I had no choice but to be successful because, it's amazing. Stick a raccoon in a corner and he's going to come out scrapping. That's kind of how I equated that in my brain. I had no choice but to come out scrapping. So for sure, that's what I did.
So Sharon, there's a lot of competition in your industry, but I'm more interested in the current state of the market. Why do so many companies find it so challenging to find good talent?
Well, when I started ERG, I started it for this reason. And that is, it's easy to look at a resume and it's easy to talk to someone and understand if they have the technical ability or not. But it's what's behind the curtain that makes it so difficult to match. And I'll be honest with you, my intuition helps me with clients as much as it does candidates. And here's why. I like to go out and I like to visit with the clients face to face. And it's not because I have to see their environment. That has nothing to do with it. I want to watch the mannerisms. I want to watch how they engage with teammates and with other people within the organization, because it tells a lot about what they can't articulate about their culture. And by understanding that, it makes it easier for us to lay a person who can match that on top, and the success rate will be better because it's the culture and it's who people are. I always say people get jobs because of here and they lose them because of here. So it's who they are in their values and the fundamentals of what they believe in. That's what makes people work or not work. And if you can't get to that, the likelihood of success is less than half.
Well said. So if we translate that into the job seeker, I've always felt like for the average person, maybe not the executive, it's so much more than a resume. If an individual, some individuals had a chance to get an interview, that interview could be 10 times more valuable than a resume, which is obviously just a sheet of paper. And the resume may very well undersell, although there's probably a lot of people that oversell too. But Is it harder in the executive search than it is for maybe the average employee?
It's actually easier. So the advantage you have as an executive of working with a search firm is we're like your agent. So sometimes I don't even send a resume until after the person. I mean, we just placed someone at McClellan and we never did have a resume. So that tells you, and it really is, you need to talk to this person and here's why. And it's our ability as a search firm to be able to articulate, here's the person's natural gifts, and those natural gifts are in perfect alignment with what it is you're trying to do with your business. So they don't, if people work to their natural skills, it's not work, right? Because they're naturally good at it. So if you can delineate, here's what the person is really good at. And then what I do is I just call the CEOs and I say, okay, I don't know if you need this person or not, but here's what they can do and here's how they would impact your organization. And that's where it really works. It isn't, oh, look at their resume, isn't it? Like you said, most resumes are embellished words that, great adjectives, but what does that really mean when it comes to the day to day?
Sharon, as a leader, right, you talk about, one of your kind of recipes for success was, your intuition, ability to read people, things like that. As you've had success, how do you help replicate that in others, right? So those that don't necessarily have that, built in or just don't have that experience yet, how do you scale that over time?
Right. It is the hardest part to scale. I think what we've focused on is the way you get to know the heart of a person or the heart of a company is by asking really great open-ended questions and then listen. Really listen, not listen to ask the next question, but really listen with the intent of learning. So we practice all the time asking really great open-ended questions to get to, most people, I love to ask the question. So describe your culture to me. And most people go, yeah, that's a really great question. I don't know. I mean, that's what I hear all the time. I don't know. And I go, okay, so let me paint some scenarios of different cultures that I've experienced. And you tell me which one feels the most like you. So it's that kind of thing. It's creating this sort of safe place where you give, and you have to be quick on your feet, but you have to be kind of armed with the questions that will get people to finally give you the answer that you're looking for, especially if they don't really know how to articulate what it is that they know to be true, but they don't know how to say it.
For sure.
But isn't most applicants, whether it be an executive or not, isn't the number one thing they're after culture? Good culture?
It is, but how many candidates actually ask culture questions in interviews? I mean, we coach candidates to always say, so tell me about your culture. If a person is going to, and you ask the number one person this question, by the way, you ask the president or the leader, because values are driven from the top down. I don't care what anybody says. You can have subcultures within different divisions, but the culture of a company comes from the top down. So I always say, I need 10 minutes with the president, CEO. And I say, listen, tell me the 5 things that are most important to you. Like in your fiber of your being, if you had to tell me what makes you your best self, what is your value proposition, your own personal, what are those values? And we did a search and it was really interesting. We did a search for a faith-based organization. So faith had to be number one. We can't technically ask people if they are people of faith. So what I did is I had 6 values. I had faith, honesty, family. I mean, I had all these different things, right? And I said, rank them for me. And what that did is it helped me to understand what was most important to that individual without asking them if they were a faith-based individual. So we try to make sure that we are asking questions. So one of my values is courage. I figure courage is, and I heard this from a friend of mine, courage is the thing that all other values are springboard. Courage to love, courage to try, courage to be willing to, do something you've never done. It's courage, right? So courage is sort of the foundation. And I've hired people that had 0 courage. And guess what? It never worked. So for me, it's it's courage is really important. But if I hire someone and I don't ask them, how do you demonstrate being courageous? I'm probably not going to know if this person's going to be a good culture fit or not. And I always tell candidates, if we're sitting here a year from now and you're happy with my performance, what did I do? Like, how did I engage with the team? So we really try to get candidates to ask good questions so that they know it's a good fit or not.
So Sharon, as you think about culture, one of the other challenges that I've certainly seen with us that we've gone through from time to time is protecting that culture each and every day, right? Because there are times where there is someone that has maybe tremendous technical skill of some sort, but is a culture nightmare. And you see so many organizations kind of chasing those people, and in the meantime, destroying their culture, right? Because they're chasing that technical. How do you coach a leader through that? How to not chase the technical, because obviously there's times you need an engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially in this kind of war for talent, I feel like organizations more and more are trying to hold on to that as opposed to really standing for something culturally.
So I would tell you, no hire or no employee is worth keeping if they're bad for the culture. Ultimately, it will erode the culture completely. I remember when I first went into business, my mentor, who is a prominent businessman in this community, said to me, the first time you think about firing somebody should be probably when you do that. And he didn't mean that to be harsh. He meant it. The first time you're concerned about that person and how they're engaging with other people, or first time you're concerned about something that isn't in alignment, if you would have listened to your spidey sense, you probably were spot on. You wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, and you wanted to wait. And how many times have we done that, right? We have these people and we keep them and we think I'll be able to change them and I'll be able to coach them and mentor them, and it doesn't work. So, I have always been under the belief that if somebody is eroding the culture, the sooner you can eliminate that person, the better. And you should always be hiring for people, and you should always make an opportunity for people who can enhance, not only obviously bring new ideas, but can enhance your culture. And we have one example, and I just did a video on this. We have an example of a client here in town that during 2008, 9, and 10, so kind of the worst recession that we were in quite, at least our livelihood, right? They almost doubled their volume. And they did it by hiring people that didn't have a resume even close to what they were looking for, but had the emotional intelligence, critical thinking skills, strategic planning, and brought this amazing culture, ideas, open thought leadership to the organization. And the organization flourished under the new leaders.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So with culture, when you have a company, and I would love to hear how many companies actually have great culture, but let's just say a company does, but the leader himself or herself are not able to capture that in words or describe that in words, it's likely they're not able to position that from a marketing standpoint. How do you position your company as having great culture if an individual, a leader, a team is not able to crystallize that to make them attractive to applicants?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I do and that we do as an organization to really help. I mean, again, Chris, you are spot on. There is no perfect culture. I said, if I find the perfect company, there won't be an opening because I'm going to work there. I mean, dude, there just is no perfect culture. But there are telltale signs, right? So one of my favorite things, and now I'm giving away my secret, but one of my favorite things to do is to walk the manufacturing floor with the president. I say, show me your manufacturing facility. I could care less. I don't know what that machine is. I don't know what it does. But it tells me, do people go, hey, Mike, how are you? How you doing? Hey, did Jimmy, how did you do in the ball game last night? Does he know his people? Do they call him by name, or do they go like the minute the boss is coming, right? Yeah. That's a telltale sign of culture. So there's all these little things that it's just observing, right? And those speak more to culture than anything they could tell me about their culture. And that's just being observant on how people engage with each other. The other thing that we started doing, and I'm really proud of Cameron does this for us, and he does a fabulous job, is we started creating recruiting videos for our clients. So most clients don't tell their story well, unless they have big marketing budgets or big departments, right? But most of the people that we deal with are between 100 million and 500 million. They don't have big budgets to do that kind of stuff. Or quite frankly, they don't put an importance around marketing. So what we do is we capture the stories from people who work there. So we capture, why is it that you love it? What is it that fills your cup on a daily basis? What's the purpose of the organization? What values do you love? Why do you work here? I mean, all of that. And we capture it in a video, and we use that for recruiting for that client. We put it into a profile page. And then when we find a candidate we love, we send that to them so they get a sense for the people that work there, what they love, those sort of things. And that's been very helpful in trying to recruit, especially we have some companies. I mean, we have a few engineering companies. Oh my word, look at their website. It's like, so that helps to sell their story.
Because this is a two-way street, whether you're doing executive search or even temp to hire, you still have to recruit the talent, right? You want to look attractive and position your company to be maybe sexy, right? Great place to work.
Right.
It surprises me how many companies don't actually do that.
Well, I always laugh that during a talent war, people stick a sign out front and say, hey, we're hiring. And they think, oh my God, they're going to come running in.
Right. Exactly.
But hiring people out of fairness. I mean, I've done this for 27 years, and guys, it's still damn hard. It's still hard. Nothing about what I do is easy on a daily basis. Nothing about what they do out there is easy on a daily basis. We just do more of it. We do it basically every day. So how we find people is we call an extreme number of people to find 5 that we think are fabulous, as opposed to they put out an ad or they make a few calls and hope that that's going to solve their problems. And it doesn't. I mean, it's extremely difficult to find the right performer, whether it's culture and or technical.
So Sharon, I think that's a great point. One of the things that's always been interesting to me, I mean, from a business development perspective, how you approach that is second to none in a lot of ways. But what's interesting about your business is you have like 2 different biz devs going on at the same time, right? You've got
the art of the double
customer
sale
side. Yeah. And so, not every organization has that sort of, dynamic. So, just from approaching each side of that, how do you get them both bought into, I'm sure there's companies you've talked to that, you're talking to before they say, hey, I have an opening I need to fill, right? Like, how do you coach kind of that side and why you guys versus somebody else? And then the same for, the candidate, why this organization versus something else?
Well, we do have an advantage of having done it for so long. That helps because we at this point know so many companies intimately, and we know so many candidates intimately. So, if somebody that I work with frequently calls me and says, hey, I need someone, I could probably handpick someone and I could just say, when can they start? And they'd like them, right? Because I know so much about, and I also know what drives them crazy. So that helps. But I talk every day about, I have no idea how we ever make placements because we have to have the candidate love the company and the company love the candidate. And, and these are people who think, breathe, and change their mind all the time. But I will tell you that we play both sides very fair. The clients pay our fee, and we know that, but we play both sides very fair. I mean, we really listen to the candidate. We understand what it is they want in their life location. And if it's not that, we're pretty honest. We say, listen, we called you about this, but I got to tell you, I don't think this is the one. But do you mind if I think about this for a little bit and approach a couple other organizations that I think you could be fabulous for? If they have an opening or they're interested, great. If they don't, no harm, no foul. We'll keep thinking about this. But the worst thing I can do is, put somebody in a place I know they're going to be miserable, because I got to tell you, mama doesn't need new shoes bad enough to ever do that. I'm just not going to do that.
Sharon, it sounds like when you describe your business and your team and the service they provide, it's not just a transaction most of what you do and your team does is relationship based, which
Yeah.
Dustin and I talk about this a lot. Is sales is also very much relationship based, and those who are the most successful tend to have a lot of really good relationships. Is that fair?
Oh, 100%. I mean, some of the people that we placed in this past year are people that I've known for 20 years and knew what the end game looked like. And I finally had it. And I would call them and say, all right, you told me years ago that this was where you wanted to be. And I have it. And they're like, you did not remember that. And I go, yeah, I did. And that's, we placed people as owners of companies. They moved in and took over in succession planning. We've placed people on board of director assignments that their skill set was exactly what that board was lacking. I mean, that's the part that, to me, that's the life transformational stuff. You know, we placed a guy, and I still remember when I called him, I think he thought I was absolutely insane. I said, I know that you would love to own and run an organization. It was a small construction company. I said, I have a $17 million company that all the brothers want to retire and they need a new president. And he's like, are you crazy? And I go, no, I'm 100% serious about this. He grew the company from 17 million to 150 million in 8 years and retired a wealthy man. And I saw him out and he said, we're here celebrating you. And I go, yeah, right. And he goes, no, I'm not kidding. Because he said, I retired today. And I retired because you believed in me. And I was able to retire early because you helped me to see something that I didn't see when you first called me. So to me, those are the things that I live for and why I continue to do this business. Because if I can help, and my team, obviously much more than even me, but if we can help people over and over and over again to transform their lives, that's what this is all about.
That's great. So Sharon, I mean, between growing and leading ERG to helping so many nonprofits that you do, to your podcast, to your book, to your relationships in life, right? To all these different things. One of the things we try to even get granular on, right, is so many people have certain behaviors that has allowed them to balance all of that. So is there one or two things that you do either on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that allows you to kind of create that space just to fit it all in?
So I would tell you, I read a lot, and I probably don't know a lot about a lot of things, but I know a little bit about everything, right? And you have to be that student. You have to constantly be aware of what's going on in the world around you. I have a pretty big capacity of energy. I drive people crazy because I'm like a little Energizer bunny, right? So for me, it's putting myself in places where I can. It's easy to get real stagnant, real stale, I think, in business, and get really comfortable. And that's what my book is about, right? It's not getting comfortable and getting bored and not loving what you do. So for me, I'm constantly looking for a vehicle to push myself, whether it's a new business idea, a new revenue stream, a new organization that I can join, that I can learn from. Like I just joined Women's President Organization. I just want to work with Enterprising Women, which is a group of like the most phenomenal business leaders, grew companies from nothing to billions of dollars. I try to put myself in places that will make me really uncomfortable so that I can continue to learn. I mean, I won't do this forever. At 27 years, I want to retire doing the day-to-day executive search at 31 years, but I guarantee you there will be plan B, and I will have another business, or I'll have an offshoot of this business. I have lots of ideas. I'm starting a new business right now that I'm working on doing seed financing and all of that, so that it gives me something to do when I'm, supposed to be sitting drinking pina coladas, but don't really want to.
Yeah, it's fair. So let's talk about kind of the nexus of your book. Mm-hmm. So I know it was a heck of a project to undertake. Anyone that's trying to write a book knows that there's a lot of blood, sweat, tears, time, and energy going through that. So talk a little bit about just kind of how that came about.
So the book, I call it my selfish book. So the people who come to see me. So everybody in the community says, oh, if you want a new job, go see Sharon, network with her. Right. So I tend to be that person. And they're always between 45 and 55 years old. And they go, you know what? I make really good money and I'm very good at what I do, but I don't love it anymore. What happens is we love our jobs in the beginning. We're in the hunt and we're in the middle of the game and we got the sword and we're fighting the dragons. And then all of a sudden we're sitting in a boardroom solving problems all day long. We now have elevated ourselves to that capacity. And we're sitting there and we're going, I don't love this anymore. All I do is sit in meetings and we could do half of these meetings. They're boring as all get out. And I'm solving problems that we never solve. And this is ridiculous. I don't want to do this anymore. Well, there's all kinds of issues that go with that, right? Benefits, retirement, income, non-competes in an area that's very small and you're in an area and I don't want to move and, all that stuff. So I needed a vehicle for them to really stop and delineate all the way through. Is it just, I need to find a way to bring passion back into what I do on a daily basis, or am I just like, I'm out? And this is everything from I'm bored out of my gourd and I need to find a way to re-energize myself to I was up for the president CEO role, as was the other guy, and the other guy got it. And now I don't want to work for him. So now what do I do? So, and everything in between. So all of the people, every chapter has a story. Every story is a real story. And it's people who through the years have come to see me, and their story is a lot of people's stories. People think they're unique. Nobody else is unhappy at work. Nobody else is bored to tears making good money. That happens. Almost everybody goes through a professional midlife crisis, just like a personal one. And most people buy a hot car, right? So you buy a red sports car. When you go through a personal one, you got to figure out, how do I handle the professional one? So the intent is to help people through exercises and stories to get to a decision on what to do next. And then once they have that decision, we look at all their information and we either help them to figure out how to approach the business and say, I have this idea for a new revenue stream, or how to approach a job search.
Sharon, it seems like a lot of times we as humans, specifically entrepreneurs, make things harder than what they actually are.
No.
When someone goes through a phase like that, is it really often that difficult, or is it easier than we think to transition from point A to point B, to adapt, to move on?
Well, so there's a lot to unpack there. So the right answer would be yes. But again, you have to remember we're human beings and we have all these things called emotions. So there's imposter syndrome. I'm good here, but what am I going to, will people find out I'm not as good as I thought I was if I change? Oh my word. There's all of that, right? There's the emotional piece of us that makes it much harder to do that. Entrepreneurs are the worst because we never can settle on anything ever. We're always trying to think of the next thing, right? That's just how we're wired. So we're the worst at trying to come to a decision on, okay, my next thing should be this, because we have 5 things that we can't decide between. It's like right now I have 2 books started. I'm like, pick one. Just pick one. You can't write 2 books. Hell, you had a hard time writing one. Pick one and just do it. I want to write both. So that's the hardest part, Chris, is it's the emotional piece of the confidence piece that I am worthy elsewhere. And then the piece of delineating and making a decision on I'm going here, especially entrepreneurs. So if you're asking me for free advice, Chris, you're doing great. Just stay where you're at.
The simplicity piece and the kind of that clarity of where you really want to focus, I think is such a challenge for so many people. I mean, we were just talking about this before we even got started. For a lot of people, they put these ceilings on themselves. Right? They think they have an identity of this is who I am, and so this means this is as far as I can go. And I'm curious in your travels, how often are you kind of explaining to people just that you have so much more potential than you're really utilizing? Because And how do you get through to them? Because I feel like for so many people, that's their gap, where you just want to shake them and say, man, you have so much potential. Like, and you want to help, but you got to get through it in their head first.
Yeah. So what I would tell you is that's an everyday occurrence. That's what executive search professionals do, is we believe in people before they believe in them. So I do the same thing. Now, everybody does a little different. I do, and I make them do an exercise. I make them write all the things that they are passionate about. And again, it could be playing piano. It does not have to be work related, but I make them make a list of everything that they just absolutely love. I mean, obviously family's on there, their kids, but and what I'm looking for is, how are they wired, right? I'm looking for how they're wired. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I make them make a list of is not that you coached or trained to it, but in your DNA, like, just, this is who I am. What are you naturally good at? So it could be, I was a pretty good basketball player, or, I have really good intuition, or I can listen to what somebody's saying and know exactly what they're not telling me. Whatever that is. And I give them examples. I say, okay, so mine would be in my intuition, and I can listen to someone and I can go, yeah, okay, thank you for giving me lip service. Now let's unpack that and let's talk about what's really happening here. So that's so I take those two lists and I have them send it to me, and I just sit and I look at the list. And what I'm looking for is commonality between the list. So Sam's story in the book is a perfect example of that. I made this person, I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I made this person make the list. And I knew this person a little bit, but the thing that leapt off the page is the person unequivocally knew how to grow next level leaders. Like, just had the emotional intelligence that he's like the Pied Piper of Appleton. Yeah. If he was in the room, people were going to follow him. He just had that mojo, right? Yeah. So I called a client that had a VP of HR opening who told me they wanted a girl. Again, this was years ago, guys. And they said, so I called him. I said, I have your VP of HR. And they go, great, tell me about her. And I said, well, he's a she. Or yeah, she's a he. And he goes, what the hell? And I go, just trust me on this. What this person's gift is being able to develop next level leaders. And that's exactly what your company needs right now. That's what your HR function really is. You don't need somebody who's going to say, shame on you, you crossed the line. You need somebody who's going to help you grow next level leaders. Person went into the business, company has flourished. And let me tell you, talk about a resume. This person had zero. I mean, not even close to being an HR person. But the person in the top spot trusted me that this person had that natural skill set, because I knew it from looking at everything they were passionate about, everything in their DNA they were good at, and they flourished. They've been in the job 12 years, and they're a rock star, just an absolute rock star.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Sharon, I want to talk about leadership just in general. I know that in your years of executive search and all your relationships, you've seen the gamut of leadership. Mm-hmm. But in general, what is lacking with some of the leadership today? Because it's no different than culture. There's some companies that have it and some that don't. I'd like to think the ones that have the good culture have great leadership. Makes sense, right? But what are some of the traits that are more lacking today that probably people searching, people being recruited are looking for?
Right. I got to tell you, it's really, in my opinion, and again, I've been in executive search a long time, leadership's the hardest thing. Especially, you have to grow into being a leader. You don't, they say, great leaders are born. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that or not. I think there's some fundamental characteristics that certainly are there. But you either get really good at it, or you don't listen, and you're not good at it. Today's leader is different than when I started. And that's been the most interesting piece of my journey, is that's all changed. What made a good leader years ago does not make a good leader today. Today's leader, I think, has to be caring and kind. They have to be transparent in communication. They have to set a vision that's clear and easy to follow. And they have to take people that, like, for example, our job can be a real grind. I mean, what we do, you're on the phone all day long. it can be a real grind. So you have to inspire people to do something that, if you don't help them to see past the grind, can just be mind numbing, right? So it has to be, but here's what that means. So by doing the grind, we get to literally transform a family's life, not just the candidate, not just the company, but this whole stakeholder piece of people are all better because of what we did. And the minute we forget that is the minute it becomes a grind. So I think there's so much around creating the right vision, being transparent yourself in what it is that your faults are, what you've learned, and sharing those failures. I mean, good leaders have failed way more than they've ever succeeded, right? That's how they learn. So there's all of that. And I think that it's harder, it's easier for the next generation because they grew up in that sort of environment. My generation, I'm the very end of the baby boomers. I grew up on a dairy farm. Dude, it was, I owe my soul to the company store. What do you need me to do? Got it. I'm on it. So it's figuring all that out and trying to transition with the changing times. And some people do it really well. I would tell you that I struggle with it probably on a daily basis because I just want everybody to work like I work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, everybody's different. There's no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon, that was amazing conversation. Fascinating, entertaining. You have some incredible stories, and probably even more that we haven't even untapped yet.
If you buy me a glass of wine, I'll tell you some really good ones.
We can arrange that, and I think we will too. Before we wrap it up, can you tell our listeners where they can find you, what else you have going on?
Yeah, so Employment Resource Group is the name of the company. ERG Search is the website, so ergsearch.com. I'm the best place to catch me if you don't know me is on LinkedIn, because I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and you can always send me a message through LinkedIn and I'll respond. Unless you're trying to sell me something, then I won't. My email is sharon@ergsearch.com. They can certainly reach out to me there as well. And I'm more than happy after all these years to share or answer any questions. So if people don't necessarily need to use a search firm, but they really want to understand how to get better at hiring the right people, or what kind of questions you should ask as a candidate to make sure that you are delineating the right fit, I'm happy to have those conversations all day long, because 1 + 1 = 9, 10, and 11, and it helps obviously everyone. So,
what about your book and the podcast?
So my book is a Well-Done Professional Midlife Crisis, and it's available everywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere that books are sold, it is available. And then our podcast is The Excellence Exchange, and that's available. We have a new episode coming out, so it'll be great to pop in on Spotify and Amazon, and I don't know wherever your podcast is, ours is too. That's not, I just recruit. I'm a recruiter. I have people who post all the podcasts. I just talk. So, and we have some great guests, just like you guys have had some great guests. So they're fun.
Love it. Well, thanks so much. Great conversation. We'll look forward to having you back in the future. For all our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your ears and the downloads. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Thank you for being part of the Hustle Nation. If you're serious about raising the bar in your personal and professional life and willing to go all in on your success, head over to hustleleaders.com. Here you can get access to our Hustle Productivity ebook, attend our Hustle Masterclass, or challenge yourself to the 30-day Hustle Challenge. Pairing these tools and training with the Hustle Nation podcast will help you advance to a whole new level. Until next time, stay hungry and inspire those around you to hustle.